Jasmine, we still have 2 seats. So if someone is looking for seats, we still have 2, yeah. Or even more, 4 seats. Yeah. So who is in the finance industry, in finance? Who is in finance? Okay, good. All right, good evening. So, dear Consul General, dear colleague, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to our Café des Sciences, which is today on the topic of accelerating green finance here in beautiful Chengdu. So my name is Felix Mössner. I'm the CEO of SUSFINTEQ China, the Science Consulate of Switzerland in China. SUSFINTEQ is here to show the best of Switzerland, build bridges and connect the dots in education, research, innovation, and art sciences. As you know, situated in the middle of Europe, Switzerland is a landlocked country. So we don't have much natural resources. And this is the reasons why we have to invest in brains, produce smart solutions, and definitely explore new frontiers. As we do today with our Café des Sciences, we usually introduce during this occasion top scientists and startups. As mentioned, so today we will explore the topic of environmental, social, and governance, ESG, and gain insights into the global and local ecosystem of sustainable finance from perspective of both national policies and private sector. Driven by the aim for a climate neutral Switzerland by 2050 and China by 2060, the development of ESG research and ratings are accelerated, and they are going to reshape the finance industry fundamentally. So this Café des Sciences is organized together with the Consulate General of Switzerland in Chengdu. So I really also would like to thank in this regard very much the team of the consulate, as well as Sisi and Aijing from my team for the excellent work during the past weeks. So really a big thank you to the consulate and my team. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the Swiss Consul General, Connie Kamenzind, for her welcome remarks. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome, and in particular to Professor Jingmei Zhao, Jason Chung, which is somewhere online. We will see him later. And also thank you very much for Zhaoxi DreamWorks Cafe that you're hosting us tonight. It's an absolutely pleasure to be here. I give you a couple of information about the consulate, what we do here. We opened up about 5 years ago, and we're a public diplomacy consulate. We don't do visas, we don't do consular affairs, but we're focusing on economic affairs. We help Swiss companies who are located here in the Southwest. I'm in charge of Sichuan, Chongqing, Guizhou, and Yunnan. So we help Swiss companies to establish themselves here. We also work, we have a focus on tourism, on culture and innovation as well, if SwissNext is not doing it. And so this is on education as well. So these are our main points where we do. You see the region where I'm in charge and what we do here. I already mentioned, yes, here you see we do economic, trade, innovation, tourism, culture, and education. And we have four, maybe you can go back because I did first and then the other one. We have four Swiss representations in China. Of course, the Embassy of Switzerland in Beijing. Then we have Shanghai, where SwissNext China is also included and located. We have Guangzhou, and we have as the newest baby, the Consulate General here in Chengdu. Voila, that's pretty much in a nutshell what we're doing. I'm looking very much forward to. I also would like to thank, of course, the team of SwissNext China, and in particular my little helpers and girls, not little girls, but little helpers and the big girls, which is Jasmine, as well as Chloe and Stephanie, who've organized that, including the DreamWorks team here. Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening. It's going to be a fantastic topic, very important for the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie, our Consul General here in Chengdu. So now it's a very big pleasure to introduce our first speaker. So with us, we have invited Professor Jingmei Zhao. She's the Executive Dean of the School of Finance at the Southwestern University of Finance and Economics. So she will elaborate green finance strategies with their pros and cons, in particular, how sustainable finance came into being and helped explore the whole process. Professor, the floor is yours. Please come here to the stage. And thank you very much for being with us.
So maybe I take this click. Good evening, and Connie and Felix and dear friends. Actually very honored to be invited today. Such a very nice and cozy evening, and we are talking about a really very important topic, especially after the so-called COVID-19, and we human beings once again united to face the most challenging problem we are facing now, the environment. It's about our future. So I wrote an academic paper on that, but don't worry, it's not a long lecture, some 20 minutes. My topic today on green finance is called Go Green, a national homework due soon. Actually, the campaign on carbon emission in China is typically very Chinese featured, 很有中国特色. Although the term green growth has been introduced to China for decades, it stayed as a concept or slogan rather than reality long enough until President Xi gave his commitment of 30-60 to the world last year. In a sense, we Chinese are quite responsive to homework-like tasks with clear, defined deadline. So all of a sudden, the local governments, enterprises, and scholars are talking about peaking carbon emission and reaching carbon neutrality. Going green quickly became a fashion and a must-do social consensus. But what kind of homework are we actually facing? Peaking carbon emission by 2030 does not mean that we still have another 10 years to increase our emission as much as we want or as much as the industry requires. The current per capita carbon emission in China is 7,000 kilograms per year, well above that of the Great Britain, France, and the other European countries. Therefore, we do not have much space for a higher emission before 2030. about 10% increase as estimated by experts. Otherwise, the 2060 neutrality goal would not be possibly achieved. But what makes the homework even more difficult is our current per capita GDP is 10K US dollars, while that of the European Union is 30 to 40K US dollars. Don't forget, our central government's got another commitment to make. That is, by end of 2050, China's GDP per capita will have to catch up with the middle level developed countries in the world. So what does that mean? It means like by 2050, we will have something like 60K US dollars. Difficult. We Chinese say, 又要马儿跑，又要马儿不吃草. It means you can't expect the horse to run fast when you don't let it gaze. The homework tells us we have to solve this dilemma. The time given to us to upgrade our industry, to increase the portion of services, and to transform our manufacturers to clean energy driven is very, very limited. But at the same time, we cannot lose our speed of economic growth. So that is a dilemma basically. And that is the toughness of this homework. Once again, we reach a moment when a sort of miracle is needed. Okay, we Chinese, we once made some miracles. Like we cover road of, we need to cover road of green within 50 years while maintaining a steady and fast growth of GDP. But remember, like in the past 40 years, we have maintained annual GDP growth rate, compounding GDP growth rate of 8% for consistent 40 years. That is something we call a miracle. And another miracle is we kind of distinguish the absolute poverty in the most heavily populated country in the world. Last year, we announced like we got a victory. So those are the miracles we have made. But thinking about the miracles, we say like a kind of magic is taking place there. We call it a Chinese feature system of concentrating nationwide effort and resources on key national undertakings. We call it 集中力量办大事. It's something might behind the miracles we have made. So maybe once again, to achieve the 30-60 goal, this engine would be once again started for the Green Campaign. To ensure a victory, strategies and plans should be carefully studied and selected. Unfortunately, the experience of developed countries cannot be easily learned this time. The Great Britain peaked carbon emission in early 1970s, Germany in late 1970s, and the United States in 2007, all of which in a quite natural way. As industry structure changes, the proportion of service increases, and at the same time, energy-saving technologies are widely employed. In a word, these countries achieved the peak without or with little pressure on carbon emission reduction. But this apparently is not the road that China is supposed to take. To find a way, we need to largely count out ourselves. What has China done so far to get the national homework done? Pollution is a classic market failure problem in economics textbooks. Because of negative externalities, firms tend to produce more carbon emissions than desired by the social equilibrium point. And it is at this point, like government need to step in and intervene. Chinese government has been using two traditional tools to tackle the negative externality problem. One tool is called tax, another is called quotas. Like tax, the environmental protection law was approved on December 25th, 1916. which is China's first law on charging a green tax and aims to put an end to some local governments exempting enterprises which are big contributors to the local economy and force the companies to upgrade their technologies and shift to cleaner production. And how about the quotas? To set carbon emission quotas to local governments and empower the local governments to allocate quotas to businesses. Both measures have helped reduce emission in short run, but their sustainability in the long run has also been questioned. Taxation is definitely an extra big burden to a large number of enterprises, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises. If taking the new norm of post-COVID-19 era into consideration, a tax rise would be even more questionable, like all the governments in the world giving some stimulus package to the economy, but you are still raising the tax. It's questionable. Besides, tax only give constraints to carbon emissions, but fails to provide positive incentives to firms, namely to gain from cutting in emissions and savings of emission quotas. How can we gain from our good behavior? Quotas, on the other side, has even severe negative side effects. If there exists no clearly cut and transparent criteria for quota allocation, local governments would make use of their privileges and rent-seeking and unnecessary intervenes would follow. This has already been observed in many cities and local governments. So lower emission could only be done at the price of loss of market efficiency. Evidence needs to one conclusion. To get this challenging 30, 60 homework done, we need to be smart and innovative enough to find new tools. The tools that could mobilize market resources from an endogenous dynamic system so that the whole process to achieve carbon neutrality could be sustainable and efficient. Green finance is definitely one of the tools we should seriously consider. There is yet an official definition of green finance in China. To conclude what has been done and what will be done, green finance has at least 3 folds of meanings, as stated already here. The first layer of meaning, green finance, means to encourage the existing financial system to channel more funds and capitals into green technologies and green industries so that the real economy could go green earlier than its natural process. In that, China might have some we call late mover advantage. What does that mean? As mentioned earlier, by natural, it means major developed countries only started massively employing green technology to upgrade the industries after market had met the so-called saturation point, while China has to do the upgrading much earlier. Take car industry as an example. The number of fossil energy car every 1,000 people in the United States is 845. The number in EU is 423. Japan is 575. And currently, the number in China is 173. Suppose China could make 400 in the future. The car market still has a growth space of 230, far from saturation. While the developed countries have invested all possible resources into car industry driven by fossil energies to reach the market saturation point, China switched to electronic car midway And this exact unnatural process is capital efficient. In 2020, the market size of EV, the electronic vehicles, in China reached 1.2 million, roughly the whole size of that of the EU summed up. China has become the #1 biggest market for EVs. To encourage the financial market to be more friendly and supportive to green technology and green industry, the PBOC, the People's Bank of China, the Central Bank of China, has done some effective jobs. To summarize, 3 jobs have already been done and is still underdoing. The first one is to build up a system of standards so that financial products like green bonds or green credits could be accurately identified. Second, to enhance information disclosure and report disclosure. For example, financial institutions are now required to disclose the use of funds raised from green financial bonds in an interbank market and report the use and allocation of green loans. Going forward, the PBOC plans to develop a mandatory disclosure system that would require all financial institutions and firms to follow unified disclosure standards. So on top of job 1 and job 2, the third job, which is the most important one, could be done. Given the fact that the green financial products could be accurately defined and information is transparent, the PBOC could begin to build a market-oriented incentive mechanism in which green efforts of financial institutions would be positively encouraged. For example, the PBOC has included green bonds and green credits into the eligible collateral of central bank lending facilities and would create tools to encourage financial institutions to finance emission reduction. Besides, PBOC will set up a support for carbon emission reduction by leveraging commercial bank ratings, deposit insurance rates, and a macro-prudential assessment framework. So these are all the positive encouragement given to the financial institutions who help the industry to go green. Besides borrowing the existing channels of financial market to fund green technologies and green industries, green finance in China also refers to some creative and ambitious efforts, like creating a nationwide comprehensive market for carbon emission. This idea is creative because it sees carbon emission from a brand new perspective, from something needs to be controlled or distinguished to something valuable. The quota of carbon emission is actually a valuable factor of production, just like labor, capital, land, technology, or entrepreneurship. If carbon emission of each firm or every individual could be precisely recorded and quantified in their own account, then carbon emission quotas could be traded in the market and be priced. Only market had this magic to assign resources to the most efficient sectors through the mechanism of pricing. The most efficient use of carbon emission quotas, in a sense, is an effective market way of going green. It is indeed a way which is incentive compatible so that it is a way sustainable. Of course, the idea is also ambitious. Carbon emission has long been a classic textbook externality issue. And by creating a market, the externalities should finally be endogenized, and the so-called market failure would be ultimately diminished. But how a market could be created? For most developed countries, market simply grows out of themselves, given properties are clearly defined and entities are given the freedom to trade. But for China, a country transformed itself from the planned economy to market economy, governments always play a very important role in market cultivation. That's the Chinese way. It might be a big project which need nationwide efforts. To make a market work efficiently, information sufficiency would be the priority. It is said that PBOC is exploring the development of a national carbon accounting system. So let me repeat it. The PBOC is trying something big. They call it a project to build a national carbon accounting system. With these efforts, we could expect to have a balance sheet recording the exact emission we have now, the quotas we still have until 2030 and 2060, and we could finally decompose and redistribute the quotas to individuals and firms. If every day business and households emission behavior could be monitored, calculated, and recorded in their own account, and if they are given the ownership of their assigned quotas, and they are allowed to trade these quotas, then to be environment friendly would be positively awarded. Going green would finally become a nationwide sustainable effort. Of course, in achieving so, we need another big green data connection system. Is that possible? Another big green data connection system. Thinking about the Green Code project after COVID-19, I'm saying another green. This code has become an identity for our access into different cities and locations, and it works very well. Following the same vein, another green big data system could also be constructed. Like how often we take public transportation, how many gallons of gasoline we consume each month, etc. Of course, we need big data driven technology like blockchains to help, and more importantly, ethical and legitimate issues like private data disclosure and protection should be carefully studied. The third layer of green finance stands with our academics. Carbon market, by its nature, is a financial market. It makes trans-regional, cross-sectional, and intertemporal allocations of scarce resources so that efficiency could be assured. To that extent, we academics could help the Go Green campaign by showing the market the value green bears through theoretical models and empirical studies. For example, a stream of corporate finance research focuses on whether or not management which steer their enterprises to be more environment friendly tend to be more responsible and trustworthy, so that deserve long-term investment. Also, a team in the FinTech Innovation Center of SUFI, the university where I come from, the Southwestern University of Finance and Economics, has been working years on a meaningful project. The team consisted of financial experts and computer scientists, has constructed a mega database. Media reports, BBS chats, all possible information of listed companies in China are recorded, classified, and structured. By using NLP, the natural language process technology, and machine learning techniques, the team makes a breakthrough in classic financial fields as how stock price is determined. Going beyond the traditional pharma fringe 3 or 4 factor model, they include hundreds of factors that could possibly have an impact on stock price. And by inputting the data into a sophisticated, deep neutral network model, the computer could make a selection of the key factors which exert the biggest impact on stock price. They call the way of fission instead of deconstruction, as widely employed by traditional finance research. Among the key factors that they have detected, the ESG is one of them, which could bring an abnormal return to a company's stock price performance. I believe as our research goes deeper, more and more evidence would be confirmed that green behavior of both businesses and households would be positively valued by the market. If Go Green is of the interest of our all, its value would be perceived and presented. Last but not least, Go Green needs international corporations. That is exactly why we are here today. For a long time, the Swiss Embassy in China has been devoting itself in strengthening the collaboration of Switzerland and China in green growth, green finance, and green research. On this occasion, I would be very grateful and happy to share with you a piece of good news. With the effort of Swiss Embassy and Swiss Consulate General in Chengdu, the FinTech Innovation Center of SUFI has established a formal partnership with the Center for Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability of University Zurich. Working together, our Swiss colleagues have greatly inspired us by their far-reaching visions and solid work. We are confident that combining international good practice with Chinese wisdom, China would finally get the tough homework done, and the homework will be finally graded by the people and the world. And finally, I wrote some sentences when I was preparing for this talk. Without our human beings, the Earth would never have a problem called carbon emission. Because of our human beings, lives are threatened and lost. So let's return the rights and fairness to the Earth. And finally, a thank you note. And on this special day, Warling, I add a little red heart over there. Oh, Warling in Chinese, everybody knows means 我爱你. So here, 你 we mean the nature, the world, and the people. Let's fight together to protecting our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the very wise talk. And I like the notion on Go Green very, very much. So we will have the Q&A at the end. So exactly, one more presentation will come. So if you have any questions, please remember them. Or if you're online, you have a wonderful Q&A function in Zoom. Please use it to put in your questions, and we try to answer as many as possible at the end. So, but now it's the floor for our next speaker. So it's Mr. Shan Jiang, a senior researcher at the Center for Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability of the University of Zurich. So he's also the founder of SUSFINTEQ, and he will present the innovative system on the monitoring, analyzing, and disclosing of ESG record of Chinese listed companies along the Yangtze River. By applying geographic information and natural language processing technologies, as well as how to gain the real-time insights on corporate strategy, risk mitigation, and portfolio optimization. Mr. Jiang, the floor is yours. And you will be speaking from Zurich. So a warm welcome here from Chengdu.
Thank you. I think this is an amazing context that I have the chance to make the presentation. I really enjoyed the speech from Professor Zhao, and it's amazing. And before my presentation, I want to thank Corny, thank Felix, thank SwissNext, and also the whole efforts from the team today. So now let me start my presentation. Today, I would like to share with you about some basic concepts about sustainable finance. as well as some research ideas. I think it is very interesting that I didn't discuss with Professor Zhao, but I think it's a quite good transition from her side to my side, that her part is a very strategic level and also very freshness related with current status. Let me introduce a little bit about CCRS. It is some keywords I want to share. Number one, it is a very empirical oriented research center, and it's also require a lot of interdisciplinary research. CCRS has a very strong focus to increase the competitiveness of Switzerland in terms of sustainability. So also there's a concept about sustainability as a future ability. So we need to enhance our ability to tackle the challenge. The first part of my presentation, I want to exactly bring all the audience to the concept of sustainable finance and where the fintech will play. And second part, I would like to go to the more specific in China and where are the challenges are, some potential solution to tackle these challenges. And then third part will be the very concrete research cooperation. As Professor Zhao Jingmei has already introduced that, we already start some preparation for a research project focusing on Yangtze economic belt. And then I will close my presentation. Now let's go to the basic concepts. I think we all know the buzzword fintech. And from my understanding, the financial services contains a lot of tool and method for assisting people to judge the value relation. So very important that it's a kind of a judge and decision-making business. Information technology is a kind of empowering our cognition to understand better, the world, different nature or different phenomena. And this is a kind of two big elements for fintech. Nevertheless, in order to understand sustainable finance, we need to figure out the core of this phenomena, which means we need to understand the value relation and the cognition of people are the key. And as Professor Zhao already mentioned, that we need to have a awareness building that carbon is a big issue and emission is a big issue. Here, let's say people, it's as Karl Marx mentioned that it's all relations of the society. When we talk about corporate value in the theory, in the book, it's kind of net present value of its free cash flow. And it's a formula widely used in the financial sector and in our business. And nevertheless, if we look at the phenomena perspective, it is a full bunch of human beings' activity, mainly the management activities to create some value, but these are all also interlinked with many stakeholders, and each stakeholder has their own expectation. So let's say we need to understand both from the investor and also from corporates and from government perspective. And this is some basics we need to have. Now let's focus on the angle from investors. When we look at the market value, in history, there are quite a lot of tangible assets from oil and mining. You have a mining side, you have oil, and then you can derive the market value mostly from these tangible assets. But in modern times, we are in the transformation to digital world, and a lot of intangible assets accounts a lot for the market value. I don't go one by one these value drivers or competitiveness drivers, but these are the mostly stayed in the environment social governance dimension. Let's say, for example, the operational efficiency, for the energy intensity. These are all important now, and that's why we see many cases like electricity car, as Professor mentioned that, and also the the IT company, the big giant like Tencent or Alibaba. They are very huge market valuation. So after saying from investors' view, now let's have another view from entrepreneur or from company itself. If you have a company, your target is to create or add your corporate value. And we understand that in current stage, from the sector, from the trend, there's so many different material issues will influence our value drivers when we manage our company. These will influence our operation, influence our chances to raise money, and also to influence our risk profile. So my point here is that we need to understand why company bother themselves to integrate material issues for their decision making in everyday business, because there are already causal relation or correlation between the ESG issues with their management activities, and this at end will influence their corporate value. So they need to consider it seriously. Now I think it's we have more confidence to come up with a definition for sustainable finance and ESG investment. Let's first look at the definition, which is from Swiss Sustainable Finance Association. It means any form of financial services integrating environmental social governance criteria into business and investment decision. So it's a broader kind of scope, quite a lot of different financial services. For ESG investment, it is a kind of investment approach which considers systematically this ESG material criteria, but it also needs the basic financial analysis. So it's kind of a little bit narrow definition for investment approach. Nevertheless, I think currently these two concepts already are more and more kind of raising awareness in the business world, in both China and also in Europe and Switzerland. So I want to quickly go through this kind of ESG investment in a little bit deeper. So I guess some students or some audience are not so familiar. For example, if you do a financial analysis, you go fundamental valuation analysis, marketing, timing analysis. But if you want to integrate ESG, you need to understand there are chances from different topics. For example, electrification, low carbon. So these are opportunities, but also you need to be aware of the risks. For example, as Professor Zhao already mentioned that probably if you continue the business as usual, you will face more risks to be stopped by the regulator to continue your business, because it's create more emission or have more social problems. And the problem now, or the keywords which I suggest everybody can bring back, is this materiality. It is success, the core of the success. We have a lot of greenwash. We have a lot of kind of in the media every day you see different kind of slogan, but the materiality is the key. I think Professor Zhao described that there should be a data infrastructure. This is also where I think a scholar or researcher, entrepreneurs should focus on. We need to focus on this materiality, because without it, we probably spend a lot of energy just for saying, but not resolving the problem. Okay, with this definition part or awareness part, I want to shift to more concrete in our Chinese context. Actually, there are problems also shared in the world. So it's about if we want to understand the materiality, can we have the data? Are the data sources available? It is exactly a challenge, because right now the financial information available in a structure, I mean, probably only accounts a very small portion of the whole picture. There are quite a lot of information non-financially existed, mostly related with the human social governance, quite a lot. They are also quite unstructured and dynamic. We need to understand this information and to analyze this data. My answer is the data exist. They are not just kind of not existed at all, but it's not easy to analyze and get them. It requires a lot of innovation. So where are the challenges? The challenges exactly share both in China and globally that companies have not yet disclosed quite a lot of concrete ESG information. It is kind of long-lasting problems for probably the next decades, but it will be improved. I think it's already quite a lot of work going on. And then the not transparent method based on rating agency. And we need more education on environmental social governance, sustainable finance. And I think SUFI is already doing quite well. We're also trying to set up this kind of efforts. And also the current practice, like a lot of manual work, key problem too, because it's not stable and it's not very smart. It's not very smart. So we need to deliver the innovative solution. And because I have some philosophy training during my undergraduate study, I think the metaphysical or first principle are quite important. We need to understand the problem from the very beginning and also derive the solution exactly by using the current available technology in AI.
When investors look at a company and decide whether to invest, they look at financial data, metrics like sales growth, profit margin, market share, cash flow. We believe that they are fundamental, but they are not enough. Investors should also look at performance metrics in what we call ESG, environment, social, and governance. Do you remember these cases? Volkswagen's emissions scandal, Facebook's data privacy breach, and Enron's wrong conduct. These show the close link between financial performances and ESG. So you can see sustainability is fundamentally changing the game for business. Some companies will adapt and succeed, and others will fail. If you are an investor, you should really think about who those winners and losers will be. We are convinced that more winners are expected to pop up from the Chinese market, given the government initiatives in the environment, social, and governance fields, and corporate voluntary endeavors to catch up with this global trend. To enable investors to make the best decision in the Chinese context, SUSFINTEQ is empowered by the artificial intelligence technology to automatically analyze ESG data from external news, internal reports, and management engagement to generate ESG risk scores of Chinese public companies. Our vision is that everyone can make sustainability investment. The reason, as Mark Twain put it, plan for the future, because that's where you're going to spend the rest of your life.
As I already emphasized that we need to do more research. The SUSFINTEQ in the past 3 years have done something, but it's not enough. We need to have a better interdisciplinary research and also develop, as Professor Zhao already mentioned, that the data infrastructure for the green finance, for the low carbon society. So we have tried some practice, and also thanks to the Swiss SIX group for the FinTech incubator from F10. I think the SwissNext also working very actively to promote this green FinTech. So my point is that we need to deliver better FinTech services for this kind of demand in the society. Here I want to go a little bit deeper because as we are doing research and also doing innovation. Let's think about where the AI, basic AI theory could be really used for our ESG challenges. Here is artificial neural network to make it kind of simple to understand. Any individual cannot resolve the complexity of all the input from even social governance information. But if we create some machine or this artificial intelligent solution, it's possible to resolve these problems And what we need is to really bring the interdisciplinary experts to come up with the right modeling, the right intelligent knowledge base, and to resolve this big data from the different sources of even social governance. These mainly including external exposure from media, companies' disclosure, and also engagement, even other source of information, even from satellite for data, like carbon, or from different signals of the information around these companies or activities. The confidence is that in Chengdu, let's say, as SUFI has already done quite proactively on fintech. Every year there are fintech competition. I think last year we were also there participating. It's amazing. And also, let's say another interesting condition in Chengdu, it is a supercomputing center in Chengdu. It could give us a very strong confidence that we can resolve that data challenge. Let's say also the different source of technology available. As a kind of scholar and practitioner, I'm confident together with SUFI, we can make a lot of progress. Now, let's say one interesting project going on, that is Yangtze Economic Belt related research. As the last presentation from Professor Zhao emphasized, the carbon neutral 2060 definitely require the whole transformation in China, especially for Yangtze Economic Belt. My hometown is also in this region, in Hubei. I assume many audience or friends are also familiar with these places, or it's already your hometown. It is a kind of backbone of Chinese economy. So if we want to achieve that ambitious target, we need to make sure the sustainable finance are integrated into activity in this region. There's a research about the last decades on this Yangtze Economic Belt in terms of research. Nevertheless, we noticed that recently there are more and more environmental governance research in a great growing, but still the sustainable finance are not yet researched systematically. So that's why we need to do more. So I won't go deep with this concrete research, but it's a topic about whether we can utilize the media as a source of information to come up with ESG investment strategy. So basically from CSS 300, we come up with 30 stocks from Yangtze Economic Belt, the listed company, to say whether they can generate some premium return or look at some correlation. If you look at the table, it shows that indeed, if you choose a ESG better performed or less pressured company in your portfolio, in the last 5 years from 2016 to 2020, there are premium return. So in China, it's possible to invest and to gain the return by using information from environmental social governance dimension. That is the key message I hope every audience could bear in mind. Related to our research project, we want to go deeper and also come up with more innovative tools, which means we need to do comparative study on current Chinese and European methodology of information assessment from ESG. And we also want to go to the sample companies to go deeper with some interview and also to understand the status quo of this listed company. And then we want to develop a monitoring tool along the Yangtze River for the listed company. As the professor already mentioned that without data, without this kind of materiality research, it's hard to use a market-oriented solution. So this is a very important research. So before my finish of my presentation, I really want to bring the quote from Karl Marx, written in the Humboldt University, that he said the philosophers have only interpreted the word in different way, but the point is to change it. I think this is exactly the current situation. We need to change, we need to innovate, and we need to fight for better future. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. So actually we will move now into the Q&A session. We have already something like 5 questions, but before going into these questions, I wanted to ask the audience here in Chengdu if you already have some questions for Professor Shang, who is here with us, or with Mr. Jiang Shan, who is in Zurich. So if you have any questions already. So now is the chance to post the questions. Can you also introduce yourself and then ask the question?
Okay, my name is Yiheng Ye, and I got a question for Professor Jiang. And I think in his presentation just a few minutes before, he emphasized the importance of the areas of Yangtze rivers. My question is that what is the most important characteristics that make that area super important in the future ESG investment or the ESG economics? And also, okay, I think that's my question.
Should I answer already?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. I understand your point. The importance of Yangtze River economic belt, I think it's very clear. That is the most populated region in China are already here. And the Yangtze River, we understand the Yellow River is already in a big problems. That's why we have this south water to north. So number one reason is the ecological challenge. Actually, this is the number one, how to say, the factor. Ecological pressure is so high in this region. I mean, you heard from your parents, your grandparents about that story. Second part is that I think if you look at current efforts the central government is doing from Beijing, in Shanghai, there's a newly set up fund called National Green Investment Fund. It's already around more than 12 billion US dollar. It's exactly targeting Yangtze economic belt to invest in the better infrastructure or the environmental wellness projects to make sure that the population along the Yangtze River, we can still enjoy a sustainable development. And the third point I want to emphasize the importance will be the Yangtze economic river right now actually is also the world center for manufacture. The global supply chain rely on this region. Maybe you know the statistics from Chengdu and Chongqing region. The world half laptop of I mean, basically there are, if you have one laptop in the market, one of them is from this region. And let's say automotive electricity car, this is the same. So we need to make sure the development of the economy, but at the same time, we should make sure that our ecological performance won't degrade. And that's the reason why I think our research target is to at least to set up some data infrastructure to help with this target. My answer is this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have another question for Professor Shang. So what are some of the measures that the average SME can already undertake to go green? So it's an online question. Yes. So the question is, what can SMEs already do now to undertake to go green? So
go green and other
yeah.
measures. Actually, while the audience is considering the question, I'm considering one thing, whether or not should I introduce one of my friends present today, because he's a real expert in go green project. He's a president of the so-called environmental, how to say that, United Environmental Exchange. And this is a major functionality for Sichuan government and to do some real job in Go Green. So may I introduce like Mr. He to all the audience, and let's give him a prompt. So maybe this question, I think due to the limited time, maybe we can invite Mr. He to give some introduction on what he's doing and his company is doing. Do you feel comfortable speaking in Chinese or English? Or maybe I can be your interpreter if you Chinese.
Yes, but
Yeah,
we
I
don't
can do
have
the-
much time, maybe 2 minutes. Is
2
this okay?
minutes. Okay, great.
Good evening, gentlemen and gentlemen and 这个抱歉，这个最好呢，我还是用这个，因为确实没办法用英语和大家这个交流，但是我很感谢赵金梅教授向大家介绍我，我今天来呢，实际上是应我们瑞士驻成都总领事馆龚映雪女士这个邀请来参加这个讲座。当我听说赵金梅教授和这个江山博士有这么一个分享和交流的时候，我是抱着一个当学生的心态来听我们赵教授来讲，应该说算是一个不太合格的学生，因为你用英语讲呢，我就能够我没有办法完全听懂，更没很遗憾这个，但是呢，我带了2个助手，我相信回去通过他们的帮助消化之后呢，对我后续的工作会有一些这个很大的帮助的。我想在这里呢，但是我刚才听到了，我很惊喜，就是我们赵金梅教授对我们国家的碳达峰、碳中和、碳市场以及围绕着我们碳市场的一系列的绿色金融的研究非常的深入，非常的专业，所以这是我的一个感受。那么既然赵教授介绍了我，我简单向我们在座的我们瑞士的朋友们和我们成都的这个我们中国的朋友们介绍一下四川环交所。四川环交所呢，实际上我们正是为了这个应对气候变化，实现我们国家的碳达峰和碳中和的目标，在省政府的批准之后成立的一个专门的交易所。现在我们做的主要是碳排放权的交易，还有用能权的交易，这些除了还有就是排污权和水权，这是我们国家提出的4项环境权的交易。大家可能都注意到了，除了30、60双碳目标之外，在今年2会期间，李克强总理，我们国家的政府的总理也专门提出来。哦，抱歉，可能是不是需要我的同事帮着翻译一下？你帮着翻译一下好吗？再给个话筒，要不我们瑞士的我们高凯宁总领事也听不懂，很抱歉的，需要翻译一下吗？还有，简单翻译一下好吗？哦，是那这样，好，抱歉，那行，那这样我反正一点。四川环交所呢也是围绕着这个交易在做，同时还有就是绿色金融。再一个呢，我们加入了联合国这个 PRI 就负责任投资原则，其实它从事的理念就是 ESG。我们做了一个绿茸茸的绿色金融超市，将来是绿色金融的综合服务平台，其中有一项就是 ESG 信息的披露。所以我和江山博士曾经也有很深入的交流，将来基于他的AI 的 ESG 神经系统的披露，我们会有一些合作和推进。好，我就简单介绍这些，谢谢。
Thank you. Professor Shang, do you think Shao, can you maybe translate maybe some of the estimates? Okay, very good. Or maybe you can very short the summary.
So our Sichuan United Exchange, right now we do like environment equities exchange, such as carbon and water and other too. We are a professional market platform provider for for various environment equity transactions and green finance services. And our exchange is the first non-pilot area carbon trading institution registered by the National Climate Change Authorities. Also, we are the 8th carbon trading institution nationwide. That's like the basic information of our exchange.
Thank you very much. Also for the translation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we come for the next question. So it's also online questions for Shan. So how do you see the transparency and how do you compare, so the comparability of ESG information in China and in Switzerland?
Thank
Can
you.
Yeah. Maybe a short answer.
Yeah, that's a very concrete question. So comparability is a key. If you ask me how I think there are a lot of work. That's why the taxonomy from EU is working on, and China will also join this taxonomy. So my point is that we need to speak a common language. Now it's still quite a lot of challenge, so it's not easy to compare. That's why we need more research and more innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have another online question, and then I will ask again in the audience if there's some questions. So it's from a student of Professor. So the student's name is Hai Tao Yu. Maybe you remember the student? So, yes. Yes, and has a very active question actually. So China undertakes a lot of efforts and challenge in to go green, and but often abroad it's a little bit misunderstood and maybe misinterpreted, and so your student would like to know what is the reason why it's maybe not seen, or what is the reason that it's seen differently, and maybe how can it be done that maybe also abroad it's seen the way how it's done in China. Hopefully you get the question.
Whether or not the world is misunderstanding China's efforts to go green. But in the field of going green, I think the world understands China very well. But on the other side, it's another picture, another story. But going green is warmly, I think, welcomed by the whole world. That's why even if given the conflicts between the United States and China, like the two master, like the big boss of both countries still sign an agreement on going green together and fight the environment problem together. So personally, I don't think like going green, the efforts made by China is kind of misunderstood by the world. But anyhow, we do believe like China and what the Chinese government is doing now could be more fairly understood by the world, especially like one thing is like with China, the so-called Chinese feature is kind of commonly misunderstood sometimes. They will always say, are you making planned economy or something? And are you like using too much of your government's power? That is not that acceptable by the market economy. So I do believe like we Chinese do things wisely, combining the power of the markets and power of the governments more wisely. I think the world will understand us better. I don't know if I understand and have answered this question.
It definitely goes in the right direction. So really many thanks. Because also of time limitations, maybe we have to see whether we still have a question in the audience. You're extremely disciplined here, but there might be some audience. Oh, yes. Oh, so many questions. So we can take one question. So who has the most urgent question? Okay, very good.
Good evening. My name is Nina. I'm from Chengdu Association for Foreign Trade and Economic Cooperation. And I have a question for Mrs. Zhao. And as you said, carbon markets is a money market by its nature. And I think the same may hold true for a green industry or green market. So I'm wondering how the concept accelerating green finance be feasible for those underdeveloped countries? Or is the concept accelerating green finance just a privilege of major countries or other developed countries?
Whether or not it is a privilege, the priority for developing countries? Yes, definitely. Because, you know, personally, I don't think it's that fair for developing countries like China to go green in such an urgent way. But in another sense, we don't have much choice. Given the international environment, China needs to make its own commitment, even though by per capita emission, China is well behind that of the United States. But by the aggregate amount, China is #1 in the world. For example, we consume like 80% of the coal in the world, and we produce carbon emission accounting for more than 60% in the world. So in a sense, we Chinese needs to make this commitment, and we need to put into action as early as possible to show the world we are a responsible world and we are a responsible people. So I hope I answer your question. Thank you.
So thank you once again to both of our speakers. So I think they well deserved an applause. So really give an applause, please. So definitely we will use here in Chengdu the remaining time for networking and deepen our discussions. But for our online viewers, we very much thank you for being here. So if you want to connect with SUSFINTEQ, so please scan the QR codes. And yeah, let's see you next time at the next Café des Sciences in 2 months. Thank you. Bye-bye.